Welcome, dear listener, to Stories for Sleep, your gentle gateway to the past, where the pace is slow, the tone is soft, and every moment is shaped to ease you toward sleep. Tonight, we find ourselves beside the mighty Nile, not with pharaohs or priests, but among the quiet, calloused hands that raised the temples, stacked the stones, and shaped eternity one back-breaking hour at a time. And if you enjoy drifting through these ancient pathways, don't forget to subscribe and let us know where and when you listen, perhaps in the hush before dawn or just before sleep finds you. Now, let's begin. Close your eyes, if they're not already fluttering, and picture this. The air is thick with golden dust, the kind that coats your eyelashes before breakfast. It clings to the rough weave of your linen kilt and lingers in the crease of your elbows. Welcome to ancient Egypt morning shift construction crew. You are not a noble nor a scribe. You are not particularly educated nor especially important. You are something far more reliable. You are a builder, a laborer, a man with cracked heels and a sunburned neck who works on projects that are older than memory and will likely outlast even the gods. The sun is not yet high, but already it presses against your skin like hot brass. There is no shade on the plateau. Where the stones are being hauled, only the blur of distant heat rising from the sand and the low murmurs of others like you, rising from their reed mats and heading toward the worksite. Sleep, such as it was, is over. Breakfast? If you're lucky. There's a bit of bread still soft from yesterday, and maybe an onion. If it's a feast day, perhaps dried fish and beer thick, yeasty and flat, but enough to fill your stomach before your hands take their daily punishment. The overseer doesn't wait for slow feet. The sight is humming with rhythm. Not the pleasant kind, but the sort that repeats endlessly sledges scraping stone, men chanting in time to their own strain, the thud of wooden mallets against limestone, again and again. You are building something you will never live to see finished. Perhaps a temple, perhaps the next royal tomb. No one tells the workers much of anything. There is a hierarchy, of course. The overseers carry staffs and wear clean tunics. They bark orders and squint at long tablets of stone covered in neat columns of hieroglyphs. You, on the other hand, carry stone. You push sledges. You break your back before noon, and the papyrus scrolls make no mention of your name. Still, there is a strange kind of pride in it. You build for the gods. You raise the walls of eternity. You can almost convince yourself it's holy until the blisters start to split. At midday, the work slows. The sun is unforgiving now, and even the taskmasters acknowledge the body's limits begrudgingly. Men huddle under makeshift shelters made of palm fronds and broken planks, sipping from leather waterskins and massaging sore shoulders. Conversations. Here are quiet, economical. How many bricks left? How long until the next rest day? Have you seen how crooked that new ramp is? But always whispered, because the walls have ears and discipline is swift. Sometimes a priest might wander by, inspecting the progress. He walks lightly, robes billowing, sandals still clean. You do not meet his eyes. He is a servant of the gods. You are a servant of stone. And yet there are moments quiet, golden moments, when a breeze from the Nile carries the scent of lotus or the far-off music of flutes from a temple courtyard. And for a heartbeat, it almost feels peaceful. But then the horn sounds. Break is over. You lift again, pull again. Your feet drag lines in the dust. Your fingers turn numb. You bleed into your work without even noticing, because everyone else does too. This is the rhythm of the builders. One endless step after another. As the sun tilts toward the horizon, the air cools slightly. You're not done not yet, but you begin to feel the promise of sleep. It's something to hold on to. You count. The steps home in your head as you lift one more rock. Eventually, mercifully, the horn sounds again. End of day. You trudge back to your small village beyond the fields, where the children are waiting and the river glows like molten copper. You rinse your arms in muddy water. You chew another hard crust of bread. You watch the stars blink into view over the palm trees, and you try not to think about tomorrow. But you know what tomorrow brings. The same stone, the same dust, the same slow struggle toward something you'll never own. Still, the walls rise. And though your hands may never be remembered, the temple remembers you. In every sunlit corridor, in every shadowed inscription, your labor echoes quiet, unthanked, eternal. And that is where we leave you tonight, beneath the Egyptian sky, with your feet sore, your muscles trembling, and your heart just strong enough to face another day. Sleep, builder. The pyramid won't move without you, but it can wait until morning. Let's stay a while longer on that sun-scorched plateau. The worksite is buzzing again. And while the grandeur of Egyptian monuments may have reached modern ears in tales of gold, glory, and gods, the reality is far more logistical. Picture the ramp. It's not elegant. It's not even stable, really. It's a wide, muddy slope constructed from crushed stone, desert clay, and sweat. It zigzags awkwardly toward the construction site, like some monstrous worm, swallowing both time and labor. This is how the great blocks of limestone make their slow crawl toward the heavens. The pyramid may look symmetrical from afar, but up close, it's chaos. Massive stones, each the size of a small car, are being dragged across wooden sledges by lines of men straining like oxen. Some shove, some chant, some pour water on the sand to reduce friction. It's science, yes, but science powered by muscle, bruised heels, and no small amount of cursing. The blocks don't float, as some dreamy theories might suggest. They grind relentlessly. They stop halfway up the ramp, needing coaxing, or worse, rolling backward. And when that happens, there is shouting, sometimes injury, sometimes silence. Meanwhile, the copper tools bend, the chisels blunt, the baskets of gravel tear and spill, and someone has to clean that up too. It's not all brute force. There are planners' teams of skilled laborers who sketch with red ochre, who measure the angle of each slab, surveyors who pace distances. With a kind of quiet pride, you might envy their clean hands, but not their pressure. If a stone is misaligned, it's not the planner who is whipped. It's you, the hauler, who placed it wrong. There is, curiously, a sense of camaraderie. The laborers may be tired, sore, and undervalued, but they are not entirely invisible. They share bread, wine, gossip. Someone might sneak a sweet fig into your hand when no one is looking. Another sharpens your chisel for you while you rest. The Egyptians knew that teamwork mattered, even if recognition didn't. And so, as the sun bleaches your tunic and the calluses on your hands multiply, you become part of something larger, a system, a machinery of flesh and dust that builds in layers, stone, blood, stone again. Tomorrow, the ramp will be longer. Hey, stone heavier, your legs sorer, but the temple will rise. And when it does, no one will whisper your name, but the wind will still carry your breath in the spaces between the blocks, and the stars will shine just a little longer for you. Imagine you've just survived another scorching shift beneath the Egyptian sun. Your back hurts, your knees are complaining. The air is thick with the dust of crushed sandstone, and your stomach, predictably, is beginning to grumble. But you've made it through the day. Congratulations. Now comes the part that might sound slightly more luxurious. Dinner. Only not quite. There are no feast tables waiting for you, no roasted goose, no gold chalices brimming with sweet wine. That's for the elite. For those whose hands remain suspiciously clean. For temple scribes and palace courtiers and the overseer who hasn't lifted a block in his life. No, for you and your fellow builders, nourishment comes in simpler, starchier forms. Let's start with bread. Egyptian bread is not the kind you'd find in a modern bakery. It's dense, heavy, baked in conical clay molds that are nestled into the hot ashes of a fire. The flour is coarse and riddled with grit, yes, actual grit. Why? Because the millstones used to grind the grain were, shall we say, generous with their contribution. Of stone dust, a lifetime of eating this kind of bread would grind your teeth down flat. Literally. Then comes beer. But again, don't let the modern image deceive you. This isn't the cold, carbonated drink from a glass bottle. Egyptian beer is warm, thick, and sludgy, more like a fermented barley porridge than a beverage. It's laced with yeast and sometimes flavored with dates if you're lucky. It fills your stomach and numbs the edges of your pain, but it also causes certain digestive conversations, as left implied. You take your food in a squat, shaded courtyard with your crew, perhaps a dozen others, whose faces are as sun-worn as yours. A few children linger nearby, watching for scraps. The women, if present, are busy weaving baskets, patching garments, or tending small cooking fires. Chickens cluck. A goat bleats somewhere in the alley. Someone tells a story, softly, something about a snake in a grain bin. Someone else laughs more wheeze than chuckle. You chew slowly, conserving effort. The bread tastes of ash. The beer is warm. But there's comfort in the routine, in the rhythm. There's a quiet intimacy in exhaustion shared. Still, food is not always guaranteed. If the Nile floods poorly, or taxes are high, or the local temple fails to provide the promised rations, hunger begins to creep in. You might find yourself bargaining with a neighbor some onions for a bit of fish, or standing in line with a bowl in hand, waiting for a portion of lentil stew that smells far better than it tastes. Protein? It's a rare treat. Maybe a bit of dried catfish. Maybe some pigeon, if someone's lucky enough to trap one. But most days, you rely on what's filling, not what's flavorful. And let's not forget water. Yes, the Nile provides, but drinking straight from it isn't always wise. It's not just fish and crocodiles that live there. The river carries runoff, silt, and occasionally more unpleasant things. Builders often suffer from stomach ailments. Some are so constant, they don't even think of them as illnesses anymore, just part of life. Still, the work must go on. You can't call in sick because of a stomach cramp. There are no sick days for the working class of ancient Egypt. If you're too weak to haul stone, you fetch water. If you're too feverish to fetch water, you're made to sweep the dust. Everyone contributes, one way or another. You fall asleep. That night curled on a woven mat, belly full but not satisfied. Around you, the village begins to quiet. A baby fusses. A fire crackles low. The stars flicker above, quiet and unmoved. You will dream of bread and beer, of dust and ramps. And maybe, if your dreams are kind, of something sweeter dates, honey, fresh fish from the marshes. Not real food, just memory. Because for a builder, in ancient Egypt, food is not about flavor. It's about fuel and survival. Nothing more. The morning comes early, as always. The first glow of light stretches across the muddy courtyard, gilding the brick walls in hues of soft copper. You awaken not because you're rested, but because your body has learned the rhythm. Pain is your alarm clock. Today begins like every other. You stretch stiff joints, splash cold water on your face from a cracked ceramic jar, and adjust the linen strip wrapped around your waist. Your one tunic hangs from a peg, stiff with dust and sweat. You don it without ceremony. There is no privacy. Everyone sleeps, eats, bathes, and relieves themselves in close proximity. You've long since lost your shame. What matters now is routine. Get up, report to the site, haul what they say, endure what comes. But on this particular day, a rumor spreads like sand in the wind. The Pharaoh's steward will be visiting the construction site. A man draped in gold. A figure who travels in a litter carried by others. A man who has never lifted anything heavier than a scroll. He's coming to inspect the project. There's a flurry of activity, not excitement, but nervous preparation. The overseers start yelling louder than usual. Tools are hastily cleaned. Some areas are swept that haven't seen a broom in weeks. A few workers are instructed to stand along the entrance ramp. Not to work, just to look like they're working. The illusion matters. When he arrives, you see him from afar. Shimmering robes, painted eyes. A necklace heavy with lapis lazuli and gold. He does not look at you. He does not speak to anyone like you. He murmurs something to the chief builder, nods twice, and departs. His sandals didn't even touch the dust. And just like that, the visit is over. The yelling resumes. The overseers are more agitated than ever, perhaps embarrassed by some detail only they noticed. The rest of you sore-backed, sun-drenched return to your hauling and hammering as if nothing happened. Because for all the grandeur of Egypt, you are still one among thousands. You are a shadow in the sun, a line in a ledger, a pair of hands among many. Your children might remember your face. The foreman might remember your name if you're particularly unlucky and make a mistake. But history, it does not remember you. And yet your body endures. At midday, the flies are unbearable. They gather at the corners of your eyes, buzz in your ears, land on every exposed surface. There are no repellents, no nets. You wave them away, swat them, curse them quietly, of course. You drink from a clay jug passed down the line. The water tastes slightly metallic. Someone near you vomits. No one reacts. These things happen. By the time the sun tips low in the sky, you feel wrung out like a wet cloth. Every motion aches. Even thinking feels heavy. But you move because that's what you've always done. And when the stars come out, you lie on your back in the sand and stare upward. The sky in Egypt is wide, infinite. It makes you feel very small. But for one brief moment, as the breeze lifts the sweat from your neck and the scent of evening jasmine wafts in from someone's courtyard, you feel something else, something quiet. A kind of peace. You are forgettable, but not forgotten. Not by the gods, not by the stones you've raised, and not by us, dear listener. You matter here, even if you only ever built. Imagine, if you will, the weight of a chisel in your hand, not a sleek, precision-engineered tool, but one of copper or bronze, dulled by the same dust you've inhaled for weeks. You squat, bare feet in the sand, and the stone before you is as stubborn as time. Chips fly, and with them, your patience. The builder's tools in ancient Egypt were modest but essential. Chisels, hammers, plumb lines, adzes, and levels carved from wood and weighted with string. Copper tools, often soft and prone to wear, had to be sharpened constantly, and sharpening required time, effort, and of course more stone. Iron had yet to fully replace copper in most sites, and even when it did arrive, it was expensive, and rarely distributed evenly among workers. There is something oddly intimate about these tools. The way a wooden mallet feels after weeks of use, warm and smooth in the hand. The way a chisel's edge might whisper against the limestone, then suddenly bite deeper than expected. Many of these men learned not from manuals, but by watching their fathers. Muscle memory passed down through generations, one misstep at a time. Tools were often state-issued. You didn't own them, not really. They belonged to Pharaoh, as did the project, the stone, the sand, and by a certain measure you. The scribe marked what you were issued each morning, And if your tool broke, or disappeared, or was lost to the endless dunes, the record reflected it. A missing tool could mean a deduction in food, a punishment in rations. Or worse, it could mean suspicion. And then there was the matter of the grindstone. Every day, someone had to operate it, spinning that wheel with calloused hands, shaping copper into edges barely sharp enough to do the job. It was tedious, repetitive, and dulling in every sense of the word. Yet without it, no carving, no cutting, no building. There is something humbling in this endless sharpening, as if the tools, like the men, needed constant maintenance just to get through another day. So, as the sun continues its lazy arc over the Nile, the builder kneels with his weary instruments, the copper edge bright in the light, just sharp enough to try again. Let's talk about food, shall we? Not the elegant feasts of nobles with bowls of honey and lamb, but the builder's humble rations, practical, predictable, and just barely enough to keep muscles moving and minds from wandering too far into revolt. Each laborer, depending on his rank or role, received daily portions. Bread was the staple, often gritty with sand from the grinding process, an unintentional crunch added to every bite. To this, add onions and garlic, which served not just as flavor, but as crude medicine, believed to strengthen and purify the blood. It was pungent, yes, but then again, so was everything. Beer, thick and porridge-like, was provided in generous quantities, not because the state was generous, but because water alone, especially near construction sites, was unreliable. Fermentation helped prevent illness. So builders drank beer for breakfast, for lunch, and after work, if there was any left. Sometimes lentils or dried fish supplemented the rations. Occasionally, a festival might bring meat, dates, or honey cakes, but such luxuries were rare and ceremonial. Most days, the builder's belly echoed with the hollow rhythm of just enough. Rations were issued by scribes and overseers. Each worker received his portion according to registers, and woe unto the one who complained. Food shortages common during times of flooding or mismanaged distribution could turn entire gangs of workers restless. The Deir el-Medina strike, one of the earliest recorded in history, was sparked in part by missed rations. Bread delayed is still bread denied. Food was power, and food was politics. And if you were sick or weak or punished, you could find your daily measure reduced. One less scoop of beer, one fewer round of bread. And then there was salt. Not just a seasoning, but a necessity, especially under the desert sun. Salt preserved fish, cured aches, and even helped stave off infection when rubbed into wounds. But it, too, was meted out carefully. Too little, and the sweat left you dry. Too much, and your body ached with thirst no beer could quench. So every meal, every bite was measured and tracked, a quiet negotiation between survival and submission. The builder didn't eat to enjoy. He ate to continue. He chewed with sandy molars, swallowed with a parched throat, and stood again beneath. The weight of stone. There's something about mud. Not the thick, swampy kind, but the kind that remembers your hands soft, sun-warmed, and shaped by calloused palms. In ancient Egypt, mud brick was the stuff of daily miracles. Less glamorous than stone, perhaps, less eternal, but infinitely more manageable. While the pyramids and temples took shape in limestone and granite, the real Egypt, the homes, workshops, granaries, and walls was built in mud. Not just any mud, of course. Nile silt, rich and dark, mixed with chopped straw or crushed pottery shards, formed a mixture that, when packed into wooden molds and dried in the relentless sun, became the bricks of daily life. Imagine a row of men beside the Nile, pant legs, hiked calves deep in muck. Their feet churn the mixture until it clings to their skin like a second layer. Then, with practiced scoops, they slap the mix into molds, thunk, pat, smooth before flipping the molds over and starting again. The sun, ever present and never merciful, bakes each brick where it lies. In a few hours, it hardens. In a few days, it stacks into someone's home. There's an art to mud bricks. Too wet, and the structure won't hold. Too dry, and it cracks. Too little straw, and the bricks crumble. Too much, and the surface flakes. It's a delicate balance, learned not in classrooms, but on the skin, under fingernails, in aching shoulders. And there were quotas. Oh yes, always quotas. State workers, corvée laborers, or private gangs under noble contract all were given. A number, this many bricks, by this hour, or else. Tallied by scribes who stood with reed pens and clay tablets, watching from under shaded canopies, while others slogged in the heat. The women and children helped too. Don't imagine the mud brick industry is strictly male. Many tasks, like gathering straw, tending the drying bricks, or carrying water, were shared out among entire families. It was dusty, tiring, and constant. The kind of work that blurs one day into the next until the year turns without ceremony. And because bricks don't last forever, especially in flood-prone zones or under scorching summers, there was always more to make. Maintenance was a never-ending job. Homes sagged and cracked. Walls buckled. Repairs became rituals. Bricks returned to mud, and then, through labor, back into bricks again. Mud brick builders knew their work would not last like the pyramids. There, names wouldn't be chiseled into stone or sung in tombs. Their bricks would hold warmth for a season, perhaps two before returning to the earth. But still, they pressed the mud between their hands, left faint fingerprints in walls that briefly held the sky. And if they were lucky if the flood came, gentle and the summer was mild, their walls might stand long enough to raise a child or two. Now let's turn to the overseer, the man in the shade, the man with the stick, not a pharaoh, not a noble, just a local administrator, often born from the same muddy village as the workers beneath him, but who, through either loyalty or literacy, or a lucky marriage rose above, he carries a stick, not because he needs it to walk, but because the stick speaks. It's not always used. Its silence is a threat, and its crack a punctuation mark. No one wants to hear it. The overseer knows the quotas, knows the names, knows who complained last week and who smiled too much when extra bread was handed out. His eyes are sharp, his patience thin, and his loyalty to Pharaoh, at least in theory, unshakable. Imagine you are a worker again, crouched over a stone block, or a pile of bricks, back-bent, sweat dotting your spine like beads on a merchant's string. You feel the eyes before you hear the voice. You're behind. It's not a question. It's a sentence. And the stick shifts in his hand, not raised, not yet, but waiting. Overseers were not monsters, most of the time anyway. Some were just doing their jobs, burdened by expectations from above and the growing complaints from below. But the system made cruelty easy, and so many took the invitation. Records from workmen's villages like Deir el Medina show frequent punishments, beatings, food reductions, public humiliation, for sleeping on the job, for losing a tool, for talking back, even for singing the wrong song too loudly. Yet the overseer was not all-powerful. Too many beatings, too many unfair rations, and the workers might strike. They had before. And whispers of such things drifted up from dusty roads like smoke from a cooking fire, quiet but persistent. Some overseers tried kindness. They handed out extra water on hot days, looked the other way when a man ducked into the shade for a moment's breath. But even then, the system loomed. Quotas still had to be met. Scribes still tallied the work. And Pharaoh's granaries didn't fill themselves. The stick might rest, but it was never far. For the builder, The overseer was a symbol of the greater machine, not a god, not a devil, just another man with power. And perhaps on quiet nights, when the stars softened and the wind moved gently, through the reeds he felt as tired as the men he watched. But come morning, he would lift the stick again, and the builders would rise. Imagine biting into your daily ration of bread, coarse, dense, baked in communal clay ovens still warm from sunrise, and finding it gritty. Not from sand exactly, though the desert offers plenty, but from the flour itself, ground on basalt. Querns by women whose arms were roped with muscle from years of rhythm and labor. The stones wore down slowly, but steadily, and with them came stone dust tiny grains mixed into the flour without ceremony. The result? Bread that slowly ground down the teeth of the very people it fed. By middle age, if one got there, builders' molars were often worn nearly flat. Dentistry wasn't exactly an option. And yet bread was life. It was the base of pay, the comfort at day's end, the warm thing waiting after a long shift carving stones or hauling bricks. Bread and beer, the two companions of every Egyptian laborer, humble and eternal. The beer wasn't the kind you might sip at a shaded patio today. It was thick, cloudy, more like a porridge that had decided to bubble and ferment. Brewed with barley and sweetened with dates or honey when available, it was more nutritious than intoxicating. Most workers drank several jugs a day, partly because water wasn't always safe, and partly because that frothy murk filled the belly. So, there you are, crouched beside a fire in the laborer's camp. The stars overhead are sharp and still. Your back aches, your hands are caked with lime and sweat, but you have your bowl of bread and your jug of beer. And maybe, if it's a generous day, a smear of onions or lentils or salted fish. Luxury, but even meals could carry burdens. If rations ran short, and they did, the mood of a worksite could sour faster than yesterday's beer. Inscriptions? From places like Deir el-Medina and the Pyramid Field speak of strikes. Peaceful ones, usually. The builders would lay down their tools, march to the local steward's house, and calmly but firmly ask, "Where is our barley?" And while their bodies were made for labor, their voices could sting like scorpions when hungry. It wasn't rebellion. Not quite. It was negotiation under the shadow of monuments. A subtle reminder that even the hands which built for the gods needed something in return. Sometimes the bread came late. Sometimes it came moldy. Sometimes not at all. And when it did arrive, it was often hard as limestone and twice as dry. But it was still something to chew on, or the fire cracked and the wind drifted over the embankments of the Nile. And that was enough, usually. If there's one thing the ancient Egyptian builder could never escape, it was the sun. It wasn't a polite sun, the kind that gently warms the skin. It was a brute, a roaring eye that watched and pressed and punished. And it was always there, even when it wasn't. It baked the sand until it shimmered. It scalded stone until it burned bare feet. It bleached linen, faded pigments, cracked lips. There were no sunglasses, no hats as we know them, just scraps of linen tied around the forehead or neck in hopeful. Defiance, no UV protection, just skin, patience, and shade that moved too quickly to be useful. Work began early, before Ray reached his chariot's peak in the sky. But early was a flexible concept. The rhythm of labor danced with the sun's schedule, and as the days lengthened or shortened, so too did the hours under which men meant to. Their tasks, the foreman knew to adjust, or at least pretended to. By mid-morning, the sweat would be a second garment. Clothes clung, muscles wilted, and the stones, those stubborn blocks, seemed heavier by the hour. Some workers tied reeds around their shoulders to shield against burns. Others simply endured. Imagine hoisting a slab of limestone with a rope that bites into your palms. The heat of the stone sears like a flat griddle. You shift, you grunt. And above, the sky is a blinding canvas of white blue with no promise of cloud or mercy. Water was brought in skins and stored in pots, tucked into whatever shade could be found. Workers drank often, and yet the thirst never truly left. There was no such thing as cool water, only less hot water, only the illusion of relief. And then there were the sun sicknesses, not named with medical precision, but known by feel. The dizziness, the nausea, the headaches that struck like hammers. Men staggered, collapsed, woke hours later with dust in their mouths and the taste of copper. If lucky, someone had shaded them. If not well, the sun waited. The sun also warped materials. Dried mud bricks too fast, split wood, softened glue. Paints faded. Even statues, carved with reverence, cracked and chipped under its gaze. Builders learned to adjust. They shaded their tools, covered their stones, moved their scaffolding with the shifting light. A constant dance against time. And yet the sun was also life. It dried the bricks, cured the plaster, made the shadows precious and real. It gilded the monuments they built, making them blaze with color and glory briefly, before the sand reclaimed its dominance. At sunset, when the wind finally stirred, there was a kind of hush, a communal exhale. The men might sit along a ridge of rock or a slope near the riverbank and watch the light fall across their unfinished work. The sun, though cruel, had also been their companion, and now it rested. And so, for a while, could they? Until tomorrow. Let's turn now to the morning before the stones. Before the chisels struck, before the foreman shouted from the top of a scaffolding, before the tools were even lifted, there was mud. More specifically, Nile mud. Thick, warm, and oddly comforting. In its own way, not clean, not sterile, but it was life. It grew the barley, it nourished the reeds, and it built the houses quite literally. But for the builder, it also meant starting the day knee-deep in a slippery, sucking mess that tried to steal your sandals every 10 steps. Every structure temple, tomb, granary, or simple storage wall needed bricks, mud bricks. Sun-dried rectangles molded with care, mixed with straw, chopped chaff, even hair, and then laid out to dry like rows of clay loaves. The men who made them, who stomped in the pits, who heaved the sticky globs into wooden frames, were not usually the ones who carved stone. But sometimes they were, because on some days there weren't enough hands, and hierarchy bent to necessity. Imagine it. Before sunrise, the bricksmiths gather near the village edge, their skin already powdered with yesterday's dust, their feet calloused but never quite dry. The pit is slick, alive with the rhythmic squelch of stamping legs. 2 men mix, to haul, to shape. The sun is still yawning behind the hills, but the air already smells of clay and effort. There are no machines, just people. Tools are simple. Baskets for carrying, wooden paddles for smoothing, donkey carts when you're lucky, your back when you're not. Mud brick production is both art and brute labor. Too much straw, and they crumble. Too little, and they crack. Dry them too quickly, and they warp. Dry them too slowly, and they rot. It's a constant judgment call, made by men who've learned to read the sky like scripture. Once dried, the bricks are stacked. Tens of thousands of them piled in neat rows. And then begins the hauling. Stack by stack, they're carted to the worksite. This is when the real tedium sets in. It's not heroic. It's not even particularly skilled. It's walking. Repetitive, blistering, bone-wearing walking between field and site, between storage and scaffold, between what exists and what's coming into being. It's in this walking that the rhythm of the builder's life truly takes hold. Because it's not the strikes of hammers that fill most of their days. It's the going back and forth and back again. And sometimes, only sometimes, there's a moment, a pause, a breeze off the river, a heron rising from the reeds, the light catching the surface of a half-built wall just right, glowing warm and golden. In those rare, fragile silences, the mud and dust don't matter. But then someone yells, and the bricks still need moving. And so the mud returns. By now, you may be wondering who watched over all this dusty orchestration, who ensured that the bricks didn't warp, the stones didn't crack, and the workers didn't vanish into the tamarisk groves for a midday nap. Enter the overseer. Not quite a priest, not quite a scribe, and certainly not a laborer, though he may have started that way once. The overseer was the voice that echoed through the stone corridors, the shadow that lingered behind your shoulder, the one who carried the list, counted the baskets, timed the work, and very occasionally shared his dates. You could spot him by the way he held himself, chin slightly lifted, eyes never quite meeting yours. He walked with less dust on his robe. His sandals were in better shape, and he usually had a reed pen tucked behind one ear, useless most of the time, but it looked official. The overseer's job was balance. Between the demands of the scribes, who kept exacting records of output and consumption, and the temperaments of the laborers, who preferred their breaks long and their duties vague, he carried a tally stick, sometimes a small wooden tablet. Each team had quotas. How many bricks today? How many cubits of stone carved? How many trips to the quarry? The overseer knew. And if he didn't, he'd pretend convincingly. There were good overseers, of course. Men who understood that the sun drained more than just sweat, that kindness went farther than a shout, that a man with an extra fig in his pocket might work twice as hard for it. And there were others. Let's say you were late. Perhaps your son was sick. Perhaps your donkey refused to cooperate. Perhaps your legs simply failed you that morning after too many days in the mud. Whatever the reason, the overseer was already standing near the temple's half-built pylon, arms crossed. Late again, he'd say flatly. That's 3. 3 what? 3 tallies. 3 cuts to your ration. 3 marks on the read list that might eventually find their way to someone with more power and less patience. You couldn't argue. Not really. There was no union, no recourse. Just a glance down at your feet and a quiet, yes, overseer. Then you'd pick up your tools and begin again. And yet, despite the tension, the overseer was also your link to the system. It was he who ensured your beer arrived, that your name stayed on the roster, that your small hut in the workers' village wasn't reassigned. His role was bureaucratic, but personal. Like the desert, he could be harsh, but also necessary. He kept the machine grinding forward. On certain feast days, he might even soften. You might catch him smiling faintly at a joke. You might even share a date or a bowl of lentils. For a few moments, the chain between worker and watcher slackened. Then, the trumpet called, and work resumed. By sunset, his shadow would be gone, replaced by the long shadows of pylons, statues, and unfinished walls. But you'd know somewhere nearby he was still counting. Always counting. By the 13th day of your current assignment, be it temple, tomb, or retaining wall, you would find that your relationship with dust had changed. It no longer simply coated your skin. It lived with you. A second skin, a muted veil, a companion in every crevice. You could wash your hands, scrub your face, even bathe in the cool stream behind. The laborer's village. And still it would return. It was in your bedsheets, in your hair, under your fingernails. A soft, persistent presence. You breathed it, slept with it, ate with it. And not just any dust. This was limestone dust. Chalky, fine, whiter than sand, lighter than ash. It came from the chiseling, from the pounding of copper tools against massive stone faces. With every strike, a whisper of stone broke free, drifting onto arms and lips and into the folds of linen. Some of it glittered faintly in the sun, beautiful and poisonous all the same. Imagine standing on the scaffold, halfway up the outer wall, of a great hall destined for sacred use. Below you, donkeys bray and scribes squint. Around you, your fellow builders chant or hum quietly to pass the time. The tapping is rhythmic. 3 strikes, a breath. 3 strikes, a breath. The air is dry. Your water skin is nearly empty. You take a sip and get a mouthful of warm, vaguely metallic water. Better than nothing. You wipe your brow with a cloth and turn to your work, carefully etching a column of hieroglyphs already traced in faint red by the artist priest earlier that morning. The red ink is ochre-based, blessed by ritual, sacred. You're to follow. It exactly, no deviations. Your chisel edge trembles. Not from fear. From fatigue. Behind you, the sun rises higher. The stone soaks up its heat. The wall is hot to the touch by midday. Your fingers, rough with calluses, begin to ache. Your knees hurt from crouching. But the work must go on. You pause occasionally to stretch, rolling your shoulders, shaking out your hands. A piece of fruit from your linen pouch overripe, sticky. A handful of barley. Then back to work. This is how the dust gets in. Not with drama, not all at once, but slowly. With devotion, with inevitability, it dries the lips, clogs the nose. Some days, it makes your chest feel tight, your breath shorter. The elders say this is just the way of things. Stone lungs, they call it, though no physician has ever named it in papyrus. You're not ill, exactly. Just weighed down. From the inside. At night, when you lie on your mat, the dust is still with you. You feel it in your ears, your scalp. You wake with gritty eyes, as if sleep itself has been sandblasted. Still, you return each day? Because the work is sacred. Yes, but also because it's expected. And because, beneath the exhaustion, there's a strange kind of pride. Every builder knows the silence of early morning, when the scaffolds are still shadows and the stone breathes cool air. Every builder knows the heat that radiates off the walls like a second sun. Every builder knows the song's low, repetitive chants passed from father to son, designed not to inspire, but to endure. And every builder knows the dust, the way it settles like memory, like history, like permanence. Because when the temple is complete, and the walls are painted, and the priests begin their rituals inside its sanctum, no one will see the men who shaped the stone. No one will remember their names. But their fingerprints are still there, pressed into the mortar, caught in the brushstrokes. And the dust that clung to them still clings to the corners of the finished shrine, if you know where to look. Let us speak now not of the tools of the stone, but of the reward. The rations. No one was paid in coin. Not really. Currency, such as it was, came in the form of bread and beer, and sometimes garlic, sometimes onions. Once in a while, salted. Fish, but bread and beer? That was the core of your compensation, your fuel, your due. Each day, after tallying his numbers, the overseer would issue rations to the laborers. Not directly, of course. There was always a steward for that. A small, quiet man with an abacus of notched reeds, a ledger, and the calm demeanor of someone who had nothing to lift heavier than a spoon. Your name would be called, or marked if you were absent. And then, like clockwork, the baskets would be distributed. The bread was round, dense, and dark, coarse with grit from the stone-ground flour, often flecked with ash from the communal ovens. Sometimes it was sweetened with dates, but usually not. It filled the belly, but rarely satisfied the soul. Still, it kept you upright. It kept you swinging the mallet. Then there was the beer. Egyptian beer, nothing like today's clear, hoppy ales. This was thick, more of a porridge than a beverage. Made from fermented loaves of barley bread mixed with water, it was cloudy, tangy, and rich with sediment. It left a film on your teeth. It could spoil quickly in the heat, but it was nourishing and slightly intoxicating. And on some days, that slight buzz was the only comfort you could look forward to. The rations varied, depending on your role. Skilled workers got more. Carvers, painters, and stone haulers earned a bit extra. Apprentices earned half portions. And if you missed a day well, you missed your bread. Simple as that. The ration house was a place of murmured greetings, of hungry eyes, of brief smiles. Over full baskets, it was also a place of quiet power. A missing portion could ruin a week. A spoiled beer batch could spark an argument. Rumors about short-counted loaves or bad flour swirled like flies around the ovens. Sometimes, if work was delayed, the rations were too. There were strikes in Egypt. We have records. Builders downing tools and sitting in the shade, refusing to move unless their due was delivered. And yet, when the bread came, work resumed. The chant picked up, the dust rose, the walls grew. Back at the workers' village, dear El Medina for some, the bread was shared with family, with children too young to understand how the bread came to be, and elders too frail to climb scaffolds anymore. You'd sit in the shade of your low mud brick house, feet sore, back burning, but with a piece of bread in your hand and a sip of beer to follow. Maybe your wife would say little. Maybe your child would try to make you smile. Maybe you'd just sit in silence, the bread warm in your palm, your muscles trembling from a day's labor. But for that moment, just that moment, the rations were enough. A life measured in loaves, a day purchased in barley. The Great Pyramid may rise in your lifetime or not. The temple may be finished long after your bones are gust. But the bread is today. It is now, and it is yours. Imagine, if you will, the sensation of sun-warmed leather biting into your soles with every step. You are walking again on a road that isn't really a road, more a memory of one. A track beaten into the desert dust by the passage of countless. Feet, sandals dragging, curses whispered, dreams fading beneath the weight of labor and heat. The sandals you wear aren't glamorous. They're simple, crafted from woven papyrus, or, if you're lucky, goat hide stitched with sinew. They offer little protection and even less comfort. After only a few hours, the sand creeps in from the sides, the leather stiffens, and blisters bloom like unwelcome desert flowers on the back of your heels. This, unfortunately, is just your commute. You rise before the sun, long before the artisans and priests. The stars are still out. The Nile is dark and slow, whispering. Against its banks, you tie your waistcloth in the gray light of morning and begin the journey, tools bundled under your arm. Perhaps you hum a tune to keep yourself awake. Perhaps you walk in silence, conserving your strength. By the time you arrive at the site, a temple expansion, a noble's tomb, a new granary wall, the sun is already peeking above the horizon. The stone is cool, but not for long. You report to your overseer, a man with sharp eyes and sun-leathered skin, who remembers everyone's face and no one's name. He waves you toward your station. You don't bother to sigh. There's no point. You just begin. The hours ahead will be long. The sun will rise, and the heat will follow. There is no shade, not until late afternoon, when the walls you're helping to build finally cast long shadows across the sand, and the sun, oh, the sun. It burns differently here. In other parts of the world, sunlight is a gentle thing. In Egypt, it is sovereign, absolute, a god unto itself. You wear a headcloth if you can afford one, or perhaps tie reeds around your neck to keep cool, but the sweat still flows. It slicks your back, drips into your eyes, makes your grip on the mallets slippery. By noon, your linen tunic is soaked. By dusk, it is crusted with salt. There is no sunscreen, no salve but the shade, and shade is scarce. You quickly learn to respect the sun, to bow to its power. You time your breaks by its position in the sky. You drink sparingly from your water skin, not because water is rare, but because it's warm. Disappointing, and because too much makes you sluggish. That's what the older builders say, at least. At midday, you gather with the others in the narrow sliver of shadow behind a tool shed. There's little conversation. Someone pulls out a loaf. Someone else sips their thick beer from a clay jug. You chew slowly, carefully. Grit cracks between your teeth. Then you return to the wall, or the trench, or the block line. You lift, you haul, you chisel, you scrape. And with every movement, your sandals rub just a little more. At first, the blisters are small reddened half-moons on your feet, but the days are long and the weeks are longer. The blisters burst, the skin peels. Eventually, you walk on calluses, so thick that your feet no longer feel like yours. And if a sandal breaks, you make do, tie it with fiber, beg for another pair. Work barefoot for the day, dodging sharp stones, praying the sight dog hasn't left behind anything too unpleasant. At night, the pain settles in. Your muscles ache not dramatically, but in that dull, familiar throb that makes standing a chore and lying down a temporary relief. You stretch out on your mat and close your eyes, the heat still clinging to your skin like a second tunic. You dream of rivers, of clouds, of standing still for more than a moment. But come morning, you rise again, because no one builds the temples of eternity without bleeding a little in the sun. Among the most persistent truths of ancient Egyptian life was this: someone is always watching. Even here, amid the clamor of chisels and the grind of sledges, there is an overseer. There is always an overseer. You've likely seen him already tallish, wiry, with a walking stick he rarely needs but always carries. His voice, when it comes, is clipped and authoritative. He has no need to shout. A raised brow is enough, a pointed finger, a pause in his pacing. His presence stretches like shadow across the sight. The overseer does not lift stones. He does not mix mortar. He certainly doesn't chisel, but he knows who does, and when, and how well. His memory is a ledger. His silence is often more chilling than his reprimands. In theory, he is there for order, to make sure every man receives his due, to ensure that quotas are met, to pass along complaints to those even higher up the ladder, scribes, priests, nobles. In practice, he is the voice of authority on site. He decides when the workday begins, when it ends, when the men have worked enough or too slowly, when your bread ration is fair or docked. Some overseers are just. Some are tyrants. Most lie somewhere in between, too tired to be cruel, too jaded to be kind. They've seen 100 workers come and go. They've watched boys grow into men, and men limp away with ruined backs and flattened feet. You learn quickly to read your overseer's mood. A twitch in the jaw, a shortened stride. Those are signs. Time to double-check your carving. Time to stay quiet. Laughing too loudly near him can cost you. So can finishing too quickly. It raises suspicion. He carries a ledger board, you see. A flat piece of wood with notches and wax where records are kept. He marks things down: your hours, your absences, your complaints. You said you had a sore wrist last week? It's still on the board. You asked for time off to visit your family near the Delta? Also on the board. And yes, if you took an extra swig of beer at lunch and lingered too long in the latrine, he noticed. It's noted. The overseer is not your enemy, but he is not your friend. He is something more complex, a fixture, like the heat, like the dust, like the slow decay of your sandals. Sometimes he's just a man doing his job. He eats alone, sleeps apart, bears the pressure of deadlines whispered from the temples, passed down from the palaces. He is answerable to higher powers, just as you are to him. And sometimes, on a quiet afternoon, you catch a flicker of weariness in his eyes, like even he knows this will never end. Even he dreams of sitting beside the Nile and not thinking of stone, but for now, he walks the site. His shadow crosses your workbench. You keep your posture good, your lines steady. You breathe carefully, evenly, pretending you don't notice. Him standing just behind you. Because in this world of order and offering, of divine architecture and human sweat, the overseer's judgment carries weight. Just enough weight, perhaps, to break a man's future, or to save it. Imagine yourself at the very edge of the Nile's embrace, where the river's steady murmur meets the rough-hewn edges of stone cliffs. Here lies the quarry, the birthplace of the colossal blocks that will one day become pyramids, temples, and tombs. The air is thick with dust, the scent of dry earth mingling with the faint saltiness from the river. This is where the builder's day begins, long before the sun fully claims the sky. The quarry is not a place for rest or reverie. It is a living, breathing workspace, full of echoes, the metallic ring of chisels striking stone, the thud of sledgehammers, the scraping of levers shifting massive blocks inch by inch. Men move like shadows across the sun-bleached rock face, their figures bent and bowed, muscles taut and straining. The day begins at dawn, when the sky is still a soft blue-gray, and the Nile is cloaked in morning mist. The foreman's call cuts through the quiet, sharp and precise, signaling the start of work. There is no room for delay or distraction here. Every second counts. You are one of the quarrymen, tasked with the monumental job of cutting stone from the bedrock. Your tools are simple copper chisels, wooden wedges, and stone hammers, but they are wielded with skill honed over years. Your hands are calloused and blistered, your fingers numb with cold before the sun rises, and then slick with sweat as heat builds. The process is slow, painfully deliberate. First, you carve deep grooves along the intended outline of the block. Then, with wooden wedges, soaked in water, you force cracks to widen, coaxing the stone to separate from the earth. It can take hours to free a single block hours filled with repetitive motion and the hum of shared effort. Lunch is brief, a few handfuls of bread and onions, maybe some dried fish, eaten wherever you can find shade. The sun has climbed higher. By then, and the heat begins to press down, heavy and unrelenting. You drink sparingly from your water skin, careful not to waste what little you have. Afternoons blur into evenings with the same relentless rhythm chip, leva, haul, rest, repeat. The blocks you help release from the earth are rough, heavy, and unforgiving. They must be loaded onto sledges, slid down ramps lubricated with water or oil, and transported to the building site, often many miles away. The effort to move them rivals the work of freeing them from the stone. At night, when you finally lay your aching body on a mat of reeds, your muscles twitch and throb with exhaustion. You dream of soft beds and cool shadows, of still waters, untouched by labor. But the dawn will come again, and with it, the same grinding demands. Through the dust and sweat, you are part of something timeless. Each block you shape will bear silent witness to the civilizations yet to come. Yet in these moments, the future is distant, and the present is just endless stone and sun. In the world of ancient Egyptian building, not all stones or stoneworkers are equal. Imagine the intricate layers of a great pyramid, each block perfectly placed in a silent testament to power and order. This same principle applies to the people who craft these monuments. At the very top of this hierarchy stands the architect, often a priest or a royal engineer, whose knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and sacred symbolism shapes every detail. They are the visionaries, the keepers of divine will expressed in stone. Their plans are drawn in ink and memory, whispered in temples and palaces, guiding every cut and placement. Beneath them, the master mason oversees the craft, translating grand designs into practical instructions. He inspects each block, judges the quality of the work, and commands the teams in the field. His voice carries authority, and his word is law among the workers. Below him are the foremen and overseers, the shadows we met before, who walk the dusty ground, monitoring progress and maintaining discipline. Their job is to ensure the workers meet quotas and avoid accidents. They are the constant eyes, the silent reminders that the work must never falter. Then come the skilled artisans, the carvers and polishers, who add the finishing touches to the stone. Their hands shape hieroglyphs, reliefs, and smooth surfaces that will catch the Niles, light and the gaze of the gods. They work with a patience born of reverence, aware that their craft connects the mortal world with the eternal. At the bottom of this pyramid stand the laborers, the quarrymen, haulers, and diggers, whose toil moves mountains. They perform the heavy lifting, the back-breaking work of extracting and transporting stone. Their names may never be recorded, their faces forgotten, but their sweat forms the foundation of every monument. This hierarchy is more than a social structure. It is a rhythm, a dance of power and submission that echoes through the corridors of time. Each worker knows their place, their role in a larger design ordained by gods and kings. But beneath this eye, order lies a quiet tension between ambition and endurance, between hope for favor and the reality of exhaustion. A master mason's gaze can be kind or harsh, depending on the day. The foreman's mood can turn like the desert wind, sudden and unforgiving. The artisans may envy the laborer's physical release, while the laborers might dream of the artisans. Respect, yet all are bound together by the stone, by the relentless task of creating permanence from impermanence. Every block carved and placed is a testament not only to divine order, but to human persistence. And while the hierarchy dictates who commands and who obeys, the stone listens only to those who endure its weight. Imagine yourself now in the cool shadow of a workshop near the riverbank, where the tools of ancient Egyptian builders lie ready for another day's demanding work. The tools are simple, yet every piece is essential a craftsman's extension, shaped by necessity and the limits of technology. There are copper chisels, their edges sharpened carefully against stone grinders. Copper, though softer than bronze, or iron, was the metal available, and so the workers learned to make it last, honing the edges with precision and patience. These chisels are light in your hand, but demand firm strikes and steady rhythm. They carve slow lines into granite and limestone, shaping the raw rock into usable blocks. Next come the stone hammers, rounded and heavy. Imagine the quiet thud as one strikes the chisel, the vibrations traveling through wood and metal into your arm. This is a constant beat, a slow percussion that echoes the steady pulse of the Nile itself. The sound blends with the calls of workers and the scrape of sledges across packed earth. There are wooden sledges, broad and sturdy, used to transport stone blocks across sand and riverbanks. Imagine the rough grain of the wood beneath your palms, worn smooth by years of hauling. These sledges rely on human strength and ingenuity. Sometimes men pour water on the sand ahead to reduce friction, a simple trick that speaks to ancient problem-solving. Then there are ropes woven from palm fibers, coarse and fibrous. These ropes bind blocks, anchor sledges, and support scaffolding. Their texture is rough against your skin, fraying with use, but strong enough to bear the weight of mountains. Sand and water are also tools used to polish the stone surfaces, until they gleam, like the smooth skin of a river pebble. Workers dip their hands into cool water, splash it onto dust, and watch as the grit dissolves, revealing the soft shine beneath. These tools are the silent companions of daily labor, their presence constant, but often overlooked. They do not sing or boast, but they bear the marks of thousands of hands, sweat, and toil. Without them, the pyramids and temples would remain distant dreams, never touching the earth. Imagine now the slow pace of their use, the rhythm of chisel and hammer, the careful placement of ropes and sledges, the patient polishing of stone surfaces. It is a dance of endurance, a measured cadence that matches the steady flow of the Nile and the eternal rise of the sun. At the end of the day, the tools rest too, set carefully aside, cleaned of dust and prepared for the next morning. They will wait silently in the cool shade, ready to resume their endless task. And you, the worker, will carry the marks of their used blisters, warm muscles, the faint scent of metal and earth on your skin. Imagine yourself under the blazing Egyptian sun, the heat pressing down like a heavy cloak, thick and unyielding. The sweat beads on your forehead, drips down your back, and soaks into your linen tunic, clinging to your skin with the Niles. Warmth. Water is precious here, not just for drinking, but as a tool, a lifeline, and a curse. The builders depend on the Nile's generous floods, the slow rise and fall that governs the seasons and the rhythm of work. Without water, the earth is dust, and stone becomes brittle and unforgiving. But the water you carry is never enough. You drink in small sips from your skin flask, careful not to waste a single drop. Your mouth feels dry, your throat rough as sandpaper. The air shimmers with heat, and the sun beats mercilessly on your shoulders. At the building site, water serves many purposes. It moistens the sand to help sledges slide more easily. It cools the grinding stones and polishes. It refreshes weary hands and soothes aching muscles, if only briefly. But the same water is a reminder of scarcity, a precious resource that must be rationed. Imagine the slow drip of water from a cracked jar, the glint of sunlight catching droplets as they fall. This is the rhythm of relief in a day otherwise filled with relentless effort. The sweat, too, tells a story, a silent witness to exhaustion and endurance. It cools the body, but leaves you damp and clammy, clinging to your clothes and skin. It carries the salt of the earth and the labor, a tangible reminder of the constant struggle against heat and heaviness. Your hands are cracked and red, your muscles sore from the repeated motions of lifting and shaping stone. The sweat mingles with dust and grit, a coarse paste that you rub from your eyes and lips. The sun's glare makes the world seem sharper, more demanding. At night, the sweat cools and dries, leaving behind the scent of hard work and survival. You roll onto your reed mat, muscles twitching with fatigue. The river's slow song lulls you, carrying away the day's burdens even as the sun slips beneath the horizon. This interplay of water and sweat is the heartbeat of the builder's life, sometimes nourishing, sometimes harsh, always present. It shapes your days and nights, your comfort and your discomfort. You live in this tension, balancing on the edge of endurance and necessity. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast desert plain, the sun hanging low and golden in the sky. Before you lies the seemingly endless task that defines the life of an ancient Egyptian builder, moving mountain-sized blocks of stone across shifting sands. The desert is both a canvas and a cruel companion. Its grains slip beneath your feet, making every step a cautious effort, every load a heavy burden. The stones themselves are immense. Some weigh several tons, quarried from distant cliffs, and transported along the Nile before reaching this arid expanse. Their rough surfaces, mottled with patches of mica and veins of quartz, catch the fading light with a faint sparkle, as if the earth itself resists being tamed. Imagine the scene: a long line of workers, their bodies draped in simple linen, muscles, taut beneath sun-browned skin. They pull with ropes, straining against the weight, their feet sinking into the fine sand. The ropes bite into their palms, hands raw and blistered. The slow progress is measured in inches, every movement an exercise in patience and persistence. Behind them, overseers walk calmly, staffs in hand, eyes scanning for the faintest hesitation or slackening of effort. Their presence is a constant reminder: no matter the sweat, the toil, the aching limbs, the task must be completed. There is no turning back, no moment's rest until the block rests in place. The sand itself seems alive, swirling in small eddies around ankles and calves. It finds its way into every crevice, the folds of tunics, the cracks in skin, the eyes and mouths of workers. Each breath is tinged with its grit, each swallow a reminder of the harshness of this life. Imagine the rhythm of this march slow, laborious shuffle punctuated by the occasional grunt or barked order. The workers fall into a trance-like state, their minds retreating from the physical demands to distant thoughts, memories, or dreams of a cooler place. Perhaps a riverbank shaded by papyrus reeds, or a quiet evening in a small village, far from the desert's harsh embrace. And yet the sand is indifferent. It shifts and drifts with the wind, erasing footprints and promises alike. The journey of the stone is long, relentless, and unyielding. It is a testament to human endurance, but also to the indifference of nature and fate. At the end of the day, the workers collapse beside the last stone moved, bodies spent and minds dulled by exhaustion. The desert cools slowly, the sun's fiery gaze softened by twilight's gentle hand. The stones rest where they will, waiting for another day's effort to bring them closer to their destined place, in temples or tombs. This endless march across the sands is more than physical labor. It is a quiet, constant struggle against time, nature, and the limits of the human body. It is a lesson in perseverance, humility, and the strange dignity found only in shared hardship. Now, imagine yourself beside the Nile at dawn, the river's surface smooth and glassy, reflecting a sky painted in soft pastels. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of lotus blossoms and damp earth. This is the builder's sanctuary, the slow, steady heartbeat beneath the harshness of the day's labor. The Nile is more than a river. It is the lifeblood of Egypt and the silent partner in every construction project. It delivers the stone, carries the workers, and shapes the very rhythm of their lives. Its floods, predictable and generous, mark the passage of time as surely as the sun's arc. Imagine watching barges laden with limestone and granite drifting slowly downstream, guided by skilled hands with long poles and simple sails. The water laps gently against the hulls, whispering secrets carried from distant quarries. On board, the workers rest between exertions, faces shadowed by woven hats, voices low and tired. The riverbank itself is alive with activity. Men and women unload supplies, hauling sacks of grain, jars of water, and bundles of reeds. The sound of splashing feet mixes with the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional call of a bird waking to the new day. For the builders, the Nile is a rhythm, to follow a cycle of flood and drought, work and rest. When the waters rise, the fields are fertile, and food is plentiful. Work slows as heavy rains and deep mud make construction difficult. When the waters recede, the soil cracks beneath the sun, and labor resumes with renewed urgency. Imagine yourself joining the workers along the banks, feeling the cool mist on your skin as the sun climbs higher. The contrast between river and desert is striking, a meeting of life and challenge, sustenance and struggle. The builders' lives are entwined with this rhythm. Their muscles ache not only from hauling stone, but also from adjusting to the shifting seasons. They learn to read the river's moods, to anticipate the floods, and to plan their work around its generous cycles. As the day warms, the river becomes a place of brief respite. Some workers slip into the water, washing away dust and sweat, their bodies floating briefly in the cool embrace. The sound of laughter mingles softly with the water's gentle rush, a fleeting moment of relief from the relentless demands of building. At night, the river sings a lullaby, a soft, steady murmur that carries over the land, soothing tired minds and bodies. The builders sleep beneath open skies, the stars mirrored in the dark waters, dreams mingling with the river's eternal flow. This rhythm, this breath of the Nile, is the silent force behind every block laid and every temple raised. It is a reminder of continuity amid change, of life persisting through hardship, and of the quiet endurance that defines the builder's world. Imagine waking up just before dawn, when the sky is still a soft blur of purple and pink, and the first faint light touches the horizon. Your body aches from yesterday's work, every muscle stiff and sore, and yet the rhythm of the day begins. Without pause. The builders of ancient Egypt lived by the sun, their work governed by its slow, steady journey across the sky. The morning air is cool, but promises heat. As you dress in coarse linen, the fabric stiff with dust from the desert, you can already smell the dry earth warming, the dust rising in lazy swirls. The air carries a mixture of scents, sweat and spices from the nearby market, the faint trace of river water, and the lingering aroma of baked bread from village ovens. You join the other laborers, their faces drawn but determined. There's a shared understanding, silent but binding, the knowledge that the day ahead will be long, the work relentless, and the reward distant and uncertain. You eat a simple breakfast, barley bread, some figs if lucky, and a sip of cool water. The sun climbs steadily, its light growing harsher, the heat pressing down like a physical weight. The workers move as one, hauling blocks of limestone or granite. Their hands grip rough ropes, backs strain against the weight, feet slip on the uneven ground. The sweat runs freely, soaking into tunics, tracing channels down sunburned skin. But it's not just the physical toil that wears on you. The relentless glare of the sun makes each step a challenge, a constant need to adjust footing on shifting. Sands or rocky terrain demands focus and energy. Eyes squint against the bright light, and a fine film of dust coats lips and throat, scratching with every breath. At midday, there is a brief pause. Workers gather in the shade of a low stone wall or a patch of palm trees, sharing what little water remains, exchanging whispered complaints or quiet jokes. The respite is short, but it's enough to steady the nerves and muscles for the hours. Ahead, evenings bring no real relief. The sun sets, casting long shadows and cooling the air, but the day's weariness lingers. You wash your face in the Nile or a nearby well, the water cold and fresh, but the grit of the day remains stubborn, clinging to skin and clothes. Supper is simple, often just leftovers or a small stew, eaten under the stars. As night deepens, the desert's chill seeps in, and you wrap yourself in a rough woolen cloak. The contrast between day and night is sharp, a brief, cool pause in an otherwise unforgiving existence. You lie on a mat woven from reeds, the ground hard beneath. You and listen to the distant murmur of the river and the occasional call of a desert owl. The builder's world is a constant cycle of endurance and small comforts, where every day is a quiet battle against the elements and the body's limits. The sun is both master and adversary, its journey across the sky marking the relentless passage of time and toil. Imagine for a moment the tools laid out before you, simple, worn and unadorned, yet capable of shaping mountains and eternity. For the builders of ancient Egypt, these humble instruments were extensions of their own hands, each carrying the marks of countless hours of labor and hope. There is the copper chisel, its edge dulled by stone, but sharpened daily on a whetstone. Its shape is modest, almost delicate, yet it is the first touch that frees a block from the quarry's grasp or carves a sacred inscription on temple walls. The chisel is often paired with a wooden mallet, heavy and scarred, a counterpoint of strength to precision. Next to these lie the stone hammer's simple, rounded pieces of granite or diorite, worn smooth by use. These are for breaking larger chunks of rock, roughing out the shapes that will later be refined. The sound of hammer striking stone echoes across the worksite, a steady percussion marking the rhythm of the builder's day. You notice the ropes too thick and fibrous, made from flax or palm fibers, twisted and braided into long, strong cords. These ropes are vital for hauling and securing the immense blocks, their rough texture worn smooth by hands blistered and calloused over time. There are wooden sledges as well, simple platforms fitted with runners, designed to slide beneath heavy stones and ease their movement over sand or dirt. It is not uncommon to see scores of workers pulling these sledges in unison, feet slipping on the sun-baked earth, voices raised in unison to keep time. For measurement, builders carry lengths of rope knotted at regular intervals and plumb bobs, fashioned from polished stones suspended by cords. These tools, though simple, allow for remarkable precision in aligning stones and erecting towering structures that have stood millennia. Imagine handling these tools yourself. The weight of the mallet is familiar in your hand. The copper chisel's sharp edge bites into stone with a satisfying sound. Each tool is worn not just by use, but by necessity, a testament to ingenuity. In the face of hardship, these tools are humble witnesses to great ambition. They remind us that the awe-inspiring monuments of Egypt were built not by supernatural forces, but by countless men wielding these simple instruments with care, skill, and tireless determination. As the day fades, the tools are gathered and cleaned, laid carefully in the shade or within rough wooden boxes. They rest until the morning light calls the builders once more. Imagine yourself standing at the base of a great pyramid under construction, an edifice that will outlast generations and define eternity itself. The air is thick with dust and the distant calls of overseers. The ground trembles slightly beneath. The feet of dozens, perhaps hundreds, of workers hauling massive limestone blocks, each one heavier than a grown man. These stones, quarried from distant sites, must be transported with great care. The journey from quarry to construction site is long, slow, and filled with obstacles. Imagine the rope burns on rough palms, the steady thud of wooden sledges sliding over sun-warmed sand, and the sharp, dry scrape as chiseled blocks shift against one another. The sheer mass of each stone is a reminder of the immense physical challenge faced daily. It's not just weight, it's the persistence of carrying something so solid, so unyielding, across harsh terrain under the unforgiving sun. The body reacts instinctively, muscles tense, backs strain, sweat pours like a river in the desert heat. But beyond the physicality lies the quiet passage of time. Each stone laid is a moment frozen, a piece of the future formed by hands hardened. From repetitive labor, the builders live their days in this rhythm, the steady cadence of stone meeting stone, a soundtrack to a slow, unending task. The workers are aware that their efforts will shape the horizon for centuries, yet their own lives often feel like whispers against the vastness of these monumental projects. The slow accumulation of blocks, the measured ascent of walls, it is a daily struggle against both the stone and time itself. Imagine the patience required to repeat these motions day after day, the quiet acceptance that the work will not be finished in a lifetime. The builders exist in a delicate balance between present exertion and the distant promise of permanence, a contrast that colors every moment of their toil. Now picture the construction site not as chaos, but as a carefully ordered world, where every person has a role, every gesture, is part of a greater choreography. The builder's life is not just about muscle and endurance. It is also about navigating a subtle social landscape under the shadow of great ambitions. At the top stands the architect or master builder, a figure both respected and distant. They carry the weight of design and vision, often seen with scrolls or wooden models. There, eyes tracing lines that others will bring to life. Their word guides the entire site, and their presence is a quiet but firm authority. Beneath them, foremen and overseers move through the workers with a watchful gaze. These men ensure that orders are followed, materials accounted for, and progress steady. Their voice carries the rhythm of discipline, sometimes gentle, sometimes firm, but always purposeful. For the laborers, life unfolds in small groups. Teams are formed around specific tasks: cutters, haulers, masons. The relationships within these groups shape daily experience. There is camaraderie and shared struggle, a language born of repetition and hardship. Jokes are exchanged quietly. Moments of rest are brief but treasured. Despite the strict hierarchy, there is a tacit understanding between workers and overseers. The laborers know their limits and the risks. The overseers know the value of human effort and endurance. In this space, respect is earned not just by rank, but by experience, by resilience, by the silent language of those who build. The social order here is quiet, but complex, interwoven with power, survival, and the ever-present desire to see a day's work done well. Imagine the nuanced glances, the subtle nods, and the shared sighs beneath the sun as this human web supports the weight of stone and ambition. As the sun dips low, the overseers begin their final rounds, the workers gather their tools, and the site slowly empties. The hierarchy remains, but for now, the laborers carry the calm fatigue of a day's work. Well done. Imagine waking before dawn along the banks of the Nile, the sky a soft wash of pale blue and lavender. The river murmurs gently as it winds its eternal path, a slow-moving artery of life that shapes everything around it. For a builder in ancient Egypt, this quiet moment is fleeting. Soon, the camp stirs with the careful precision footsteps on packed earth, soft conversations, the clink of tools being readied. The day begins with a modest meal course bread, perhaps a bit of dried fish, or some lentils food that fuels the body without luxury. A scent of fresh mud and river reeds mixes with the smoke of small cooking fires. The builders gather, their faces lined with weariness and resolve, their hands calloused and strong. Imagine the steady beat of their work, the rhythmic lifting, sliding, and setting of stone, the crackle of chips falling from chisels, the muted grunt of exertion, the scrape of sledges over sand. It is a soundscape defined by the earth itself, a slow pulse in sync with the sun's gradual climb. Time stretches and contracts here. Hours can seem endless, each moment packed with labor. Yet the work is punctuated by brief reprieves, moments to rest in the shade of a fig tree, to drink from a clay jar, to exchange quiet words with fellow workers. The pace is relentless but measured, a constant struggle balanced with small comforts. The Nile itself offers a kind of gentle assurance. Its waters carry not just the lifeblood of crops and animals, but also a rhythm that the builders come to know intimately. The annual flood dictates the calendar, slowing work during high waters, speeding it during low. The river's presence is a reminder of cycles larger than any one man, a natural cadence that shapes the rhythm of daily life. As dusk falls, the builders retreat to their simple shelters, woven mats, mud bricks, a place to lay down weary bodies. The sky deepens to indigo, and the first stars appear, blinking softly over the desert horizon. The cool night air carries the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, and the whisper of wind through palm fronds. In these quiet hours, the builders rest, their muscles aching, but minds settling into the gentle lull of night. The day's labor recedes, replaced by the comforting certainty of sleep and the promise of another dawn. Now, imagine the unseen force that hovers over every block laid, every plan drawn the will of the pharaoh. To a builder, the pharaoh is not just a ruler but a divine presence, the earthly embodiment of gods and eternity. His word is law, his vision a mandate that shapes the landscape itself. Though the builders rarely see the pharaoh, his influence is felt everywhere. The grand monuments they raise are monuments not only to stone and sweat, but to power and belief. Every pyramid, temple, and obelisk is a testament to his reign and to the cosmic order he is meant to uphold. The pharaoh's power is subtle, woven into the fabric of daily life through rituals, symbols, and the omnipresent gaze of priests and officials. Imagine the procession of messages sent down from the royal court, commands, inspections, offerings, that ripple through the workforce, a reminder that the builder's toil is part of something far greater. But this power is also a pressure. The pharaoh's expectations are exacting. Mistakes are not easily forgiven, and delays can carry heavy consequences. The builders carry this weight silently, aware that their labor is both an honor and a burden. Yet, within this system, there is a strange dignity. To serve the pharaoh is to serve the gods themselves, to participate in the eternal dance of life, death, and rebirth that defines Egyptian belief. Imagine the quiet pride that accompanies the setting of a perfect stone, and knowledge that this small act contributes to a legacy meant to last forever. The pharaoh's will may be distant, but it is ever present, an invisible thread that connects. As smallest laborer to the grand design of the cosmos, binding them to a history carved in stone and whispered on the desert wind. Imagine the long shadows cast by towering stone pillars, the soft rustling of linen robes, and the faint murmur of voices beneath the vast Egyptian sky. The grand monuments, the pyramids, the temples, the sprawling complexes stand silent and majestic, their stones cold to the touch, but warm with human stories. Yet behind these colossal creations lie countless lives rarely seen or remembered. The builders, the artisans, the laborers, the ordinary souls who gave breath to stone, lived their days in rhythms far from the royal courts. Their world was a patchwork of campsites, dusty roads, and riverbanks where tools were sharpened and meals shared. Picture a typical day. The builders rise early, their bodies still heavy with sleep, to the sound of a distant horn or the call of a foreman. Their mornings begin with the precise preparation of tools, the selection of stones, and the quiet murmurs of prayers for safety and strength. The smell of dust mingles with the earthy scent of mud and the tang of sweat. Life here is governed by cycles, work, rest, food, and moments stolen for laughter or reflection. Despite the hard labor, moments of humanity persist. Imagine a shared joke as a heavy block is slid into place, or a whispered prayer when the sun beats mercilessly down. Yet these lives are marked by a constant tension. The builders work under watchful eyes, their every move scrutinized by overseers who guard the pharaoh's grand vision. Mistakes could mean punishment, delays risked frustration from the elite, and the relentless pace of work left little room for personal time. Still, there are signs of community. Simple shelters provide respite, meals are shared around fires, and tales of the past and hopes for the future are exchanged beneath the stars. Here, amidst the dust and stone, life unfolds quietly, a delicate balance between toil and fleeting peace. The monuments themselves, though silent, seem to whisper these stories if one listens closely, the rhythm of human effort etched in every groove and curve, a testament not only to power but to perseverance. Now, turn your attention to the stones themselves, massive blocks hewn from quarries miles away, transported by human strength and ingenuity. Imagine the grit under fingernails, the blisters forming on hands, the steady heave of muscles as men pull sledges across sun-baked earth. Each stone carries more than weight. It carries intention, belief, and the unspoken dreams of those who shaped it. The process is slow, deliberate, and exhausting. The builders must coordinate with silent precision, their bodies moving in a shared rhythm that balances force with care. Picture the quarry, where rough blocks are extracted under the hot sun, the air thick with dust and the sound of chisels striking stone. Then imagine the journey stones slid onto wooden sledges, teams of men pulling with all their might, sometimes aided by water or grease to ease friction. This journey is fraught with challenge. The terrain is unforgiving, the heat relentless, and the risk of injury high. A misstep could shatter a precious block, undoing days of work. Yet the builders persevere, driven by duty, necessity, and the faint hope of recognition. At the construction site, stones are carefully set into place. The builders use levers, ramps, and ingenuity to raise these massive pieces, fitting them together with an almost sacred precision. Every block must align perfectly, each one a small note in a larger symphony of stone. Beyond the physical there is a spiritual weight. The builders understand their work as a bridge between the mortal and the divine, a way to honor gods and pharaohs and to secure a place in eternity. This knowledge carries a quiet dignity, but also a heavy burden, a constant reminder that their lives are woven into a tapestry far larger than themselves. As dusk falls and the builders rest, the stones stand silent and still, but their presence is a living monument to human endurance, faith, and the relentless passage of time. Imagine yourself resting beside the Nile after a day of relentless labor. The sun dips low, casting long shadows over the land, the air thick with the scent of river reeds and drying mud. Around you, the distant sounds of the city fade into a gentle hush, broken only by the occasional splash of water or the call of a night bird. But beneath this calm surface lies a quiet discontent. The builders, those who give shape to eternity, carry burdens heavier than stone. Their lives, though integral to the grandeur of Egypt, are often marked by hardship and sacrifice, hidden behind the shimmering facades of temples and tombs. Consider the rhythm of their days. Waking before dawn, muscles aching from yesterday's work, and setting out again into the relentless heat. The body becomes a vessel of endurance, pushed beyond limits by the demands of a civilization obsessed with immortality. Yet beyond physical strain, there is a deeper weariness. The builders labor not for themselves, but for others' pharaohs, priests, and elites whose names will echo through history, while the builders' own stories remain silent. Their work is a constant struggle against invisibility, a life defined by repetition and the unyielding passage of time. Imagine the conversations whispered around evening fires, tales of dreams deferred, of families left behind, of a yearning for a life less constrained by duty. These moments are fragile, fleeting escapes from a reality where hope often feels as distant as the stars overhead. Still, within this quiet discontent lies a subtle resilience. The builders find strength in camaraderie, in shared hardship and small pleasures. A song hummed softly as stones are moved, a smile exchanged despite exhaustion, a moment of stillness beneath the vast sky. The monuments stand as silent witnesses to this hidden world, their stones carrying not only the weight of history, but the echoes of countless lives, worn yet unbroken. Now picture the horizon stretching endlessly before you, an expanse of golden sand meeting a pale blue sky, touched by the soft glow of dawn. This horizon is both a promise and a challenge for the builders of ancient Egypt. Each day they face the same landscape, the same tasks, the same unyielding march of labor. The work is never done. The monuments demand constant care, the quarries offer no respite, and the needs of the state press on without pause. Imagine the routine: preparing tools, hauling stones, fitting blocks into place with careful precision. The builder's lives unfold in cycles days, blending into weeks, seasons passing in an unbroken chain of toil. Yet even as the work seems endless, there is a rhythm to it, a strange harmony found in repetition and shared purpose. The builders move as one body, their efforts synchronized by experience and necessity. In this rhythm lies a quiet comfort, a balm against the vastness of their task. But the horizon also holds uncertainty. The future is never guaranteed for those who labor beneath the sun. Illness, injury, or harsh punishment could end a life abruptly, leaving families to face hardship and loss. Imagine the builder's thoughts. As they gaze toward that horizon, dreams of rest, of simpler days, or perhaps a quiet hope that their efforts will be remembered, even if only in the stones they leave behind. As the sun sets and the desert cools, the builders return to their shelters, bodies weary but spirits enduring. The horizon remains, vast and unchanging, a silent witness to lives shaped by the eternal dance of labor and endurance. Imagine the gentle flicker of oil lamps inside a modest shelter near the construction site, casting long shadows on walls lined with simple tools and worn sandals. The builders retreat here after long sun-soaked days, their hands roughened by toil, but still capable of delicate craftsmanship. Though their names rarely appear in the grand narratives, these hands shape the future with precision and care. Every chisel strike, every measured placement of stone was a quiet act of creation, a whisper of permanence amid the shifting sands of time. Consider the artisans among the builders, the sculptors who carved hieroglyphs telling stories, the painters who added color to cold stone, and the stonecutters who transformed raw blocks into the smooth surfaces of a temple's face. Their work requires patience and skill, a calm focus that contrasts with the physical demands of hauling and lifting. Imagine the camaraderie that blooms in these quiet moments, the shared laughter over cracked bread, the careful passing of water. From hand to hand, the stories told in low voices about distant lands or family back home. In these moments, the builders reclaim a part of themselves, momentarily free from the weight of their labor. Yet this small sanctuary is fragile. The builders are ever aware of the expectations that surround them. The pharaoh's vision must be realized, the gods must be honored, and the cycle of work must continue. There is little room for rest, and even less for complaint. The monuments, towering and majestic, stand not only as symbols of power, but as silent guardians of these unseen lives. Their grandeur is built upon countless quiet hours, upon hands steady despite fatigue, upon spirits resilient despite hardship. Now, picture the desert wind sweeping softly over the ancient stones, whispering through the columns, tracing the outlines of carvings worn smooth by centuries. The monuments seem to breathe with the stories of those who built them, a legacy carried on in the very air. Though the builders themselves have vanished, their work remains. Each block of stone, each carefully fitted joint, is a testament to human endurance, to lives lived in service of something greater than themselves. Imagine standing quietly among the ruins at dusk, the colors of the setting sun painting the sky in soft hues. The stones glow warmly, and the gentle breeze carries a sense of peace and timelessness. The builders' lives were marked by hardship, yes, but also by a profound connection to their world, the Nile's endless flow, the rhythms of nature, the pulse of a civilization striving for immortality. Their story is woven into the fabric of Egypt itself, a subtle thread linking past and present. And as you listen, perhaps you feel the steady heartbeat of that distant time, slow and measured, echoing in your own breath. The builder's legacy is not only in stone, but in the quiet resilience of the human spirit. And now, dear listener, we come to the end of this long, sun-drenched journey. A journey that began in dust and stone, under a blazing Egyptian sun, Among men whose names were not etched in the histories they helped to build, men who carried the pyramids, block by block, one backache at a time. Let the air still. Let your mind drift. The ancient builders of Egypt lived lives that were, in so many ways, ordinary. And yet, the weight of their labor has echoed through the centuries, their silent efforts towering over time like the monuments they raised. These were not kings or priests or poets. They were not gilded in gold. They did not dine in perfumed chambers. And still, without them, Egypt would have been dust in the wind. Imagine again their mornings, the hush before dawn. A yawn, a stretch. The scratching of linen over rough skin. Sand between their toes before the sun had even touched the limestone. A breakfast, perhaps, of bread too tough and beer too warm. A whispered prayer to Ptah or Thoth, or maybe to no God at all, just a silent plea that today might be easier than yesterday. And then the rhythm began again, the endless rhythm. Hauling, cutting, stacking, measuring, chiseling, the ache of repetition. The muscles that tightened like rope, the patience of the hand, the sweat that pooled in the hollows of the collarbone. The conversations held only with the stone. But not all was hardship. In the shade, jokes were shared. In the stillness, there were friendships formed over shared misfortune, and the occasional kindness a clay cup of cool water passed to another without a word. The simple joy of lying on one's back, just for a moment, watching a hawk wheel silently above the sight. The beauty of survival. And survival was, in many ways, their rebellion. Not a rebellion with swords or slogans, but one of sheer persistence. Because every day they got up, and every day they built. Even when their backs protested. Even when the overseers barked. Even when the desert wind stung their eyes. Still, they worked. There is poetry in that. We may never know most of their names. Their stories were not written in ink or carved into. Temples, they are not sung in scrolls or depicted in wall paintings, but we feel them in the stone. The imperfections in the blocks, the fingerprints left in half-fired bricks, the tool marks that remain centuries later, whispering, I was here. And perhaps that's the most human thing of all the longing to leave a mark, even when the world won't remember your name. So tonight, as you sink slowly into the warmth of your blanket, consider that you too are made of these same things, sweat and silence, patience and breath, longing and work. Your days may be very different from those of an Egyptian builder, but still you rise. Still you carry your burdens. Still you shape the world around you. Piece by piece, let that be enough. Let the builders rest now. Let their aching hands find peace. And as the Nile flows on, and the wind murmurs through the palm fronds, we gently leave their world behind, but not forgotten. Thank you, dear listener, for walking this path with us. And if you enjoy drifting through these ancient pathways, don't forget to subscribe and let us know where and when you listen, perhaps tucked beneath the covers or wandering beneath your own moonlit sky. From Stories for Sleep, may your dreams tonight be quiet, timeless, and free of limestone dust. Good night.